Guys, I mean, I'm so bummed out. I think that I don't know how I'm going to go on. I'm so sad, so depressed. I couldn't even finish this video. It took me several days of just laying in bed and crying. Tomorrow's the first work day after everything, so I'm going to contact all my schools and ask them to rescind my writing degrees because obviously I don't know anything about writing. I didn't deserve all those A's that I got. Ivy League schools aren't any good. One of the best art schools in the world. What do they know? Okay, is that long enough for all the homophobes gone? I gave them enough time to write their 6-word idiotic comments because I have so much to say. Your writer auntie is a mean old bitch. I can take it. I can take the mean comments, and you don't have to. Don't let the bullies get you down. The Duffers completely screwed up their show, their legacy, and what they could have accomplished. So we were wrong. I can't believe the amount of gross men who just specifically seek out Byler content to make nasty comments. I've been called, basically insinuated that I want to see kids kiss for my own sexual gratification. I have been called a man, told I sound like a man. I don't think I sound like a man. I just don't talk in a baby voice that women are expected to appeal to men with inadequacies of all kinds, in particular intellectual, because I can't believe how stupid the people are that are commenting on my videos, except that I can because I'm a 54-year-old woman, so I've encountered this. So let me first say I'm so sorry that they did this to you, and I'm sorry that I was naive. This is my first experience with queerbaiting. Just like Stranger Things, I may have watched other series where there was queerbaiting but didn't pick up on the signs of characters being queer-coded, because as a straight person, obviously, like most straight people, I'm going to have, I'm coming from that perspective, right, of assuming people are straight, just like people are, like I spoke about before, that, characters are presumed male, presumed white, presumed straight. So that's part of my bias. The only difference, it's a big difference, is that I understand that I have a bias. I just may not always question it, like I didn't until season 5, episode 4, and I'm sure there are other shows. I didn't watch Sherlock. I know that's one of the famous examples, but I'm sure there are shows that I watched. In fact, I know that was a big thing in in the Star Wars sequels, of people thinking that Poe had a crush on was that character Finn? Am I confusing everything and names? But anyway, so I do want to apologize that they did this to you, because it's truly disgusting. There is some multi-layered meta abuse happening here, where the Duffers had the main character be gay and abused every season, then had the actor have to relive his coming out shortly after he came out in real life. And I think I saw an interview where Noah said that he hadn't, I think the LA Times interview, that he had just barely gone through it in real life and hadn't told all the cast yet. So he had to do that scene while he was 19 years old and just came out. That's very young. I know that 19 and 20 is an adult, but you're barely an adult. There's so many experiences you haven't had. A typical 19-year-old who isn't an actor with a lot of money hasn't lived on their own for very long. They maybe live with roommates, or maybe live in a dorm in college. If they're living on their own, they're probably having to work 2 jobs. I mean, it's just at 19, you just don't have that much life experience. So it's really an extended teenager dumb, right? You've maybe had 1 or 2 high school relationships, or none. And particularly if you're gay, and gay in a small town, it's none, as the character Will has. So it's what I'm seeing in my comments is so disgusting. I don't know if I should delete it. I personally have always enjoyed talking down to dumb men who talk down to me, because that's been the story of my entire life, is people that are just intellectually inferior to me treating me as if I'm inferior to them purely because of what I look like, because I'm a woman, because I'm half black, because I don't have a lot of money. So therefore, all those things means I'm inferior. Yet, who's more accomplished with also having to take a lot of abuse in those spaces? These people are, making fun of my writing degrees. I graduated from an Ivy League university, and I have people who can barely write a sentence in my comments, making fun of my degrees. One called it my Mickey Mouse writing degree. Yeah, that's actually kind of spot on, because my MFA is from CalArts, one of the best art schools in the world. So idiots are making fun of me, and I've accomplished two things none of them have done. Some of these people, I don't think, barely squeaked out of high school. But yeah, make fun of me. But guess what? I've been through this before. Again, like I said, I've been through this my entire life, of people that are just entirely intellectually inferior to me making fun of me. But also, this is such a flashback to the 2016, 2020, and 2024 elections, where idiots were, talking down to me and making fun of my degrees because suddenly education makes you stupid, but idiots are the smart ones. Here's the thing. Winning the horse race, which is so much of what people talk about with elections, that doesn't make you better. Because one of the reasons that Trump won, besides the potential of complete election interference technologically, is that 4 million voters were kicked off the voting rolls, and they didn't know that till they tried to vote. And guess who was kicked off the voting rolls? Women, blacks, gays, students, the people that were likely to vote Democrat. I think that I saw a news story the other day that there was a district where they found 400% of voters voted. That means votes were counted 4 times. So the only elections where we've had incidents of tampering and irregularities were 2016 and 2024. And Trump is the one that kept talking about the election's rigged if he didn't win. It's almost exactly like the show, right? Of being gaslit and the person who's lying being taken as true. I mean, the people who think that Malevolent was the ship that should have sailed are probably the same people that think Donald Trump and his wife were in love. Like she slaps his hand away. There was no chemistry between them all season. And by the way, if they were going to be endgame, why weren't they a couple the whole time? Was that the plot twist that suddenly Mike's in love with her and gives her that incredibly awkward kiss? Who falls for that? And again, these are people that are dumb, because how was that kiss romantic? How was that kiss like? It was so cringy. I felt uncomfortable watching them kiss. I felt like it made me asexual. It was like, I felt bad for them. That vein pops out of Finn's forehead. It's like so forced. But, but because they literally kissed, people that can only see things on a small, obvious surface level bought it. But here's the thing. I think the reason that the girls and gays, as I will call it, of course I'm an adult woman and many fans are, why the girls and gays were the primary groups to see the Byler signs, which they weren't even signs. So yeah, they were just, like that giant sign pointing to the closet. They weren't just like hints. It was seeded from the beginning. There's so much. Like, I, as a straight woman, picked up on it when I actually watched and paid attention. I think that's part of the problem, is people not paying attention. But the reason girls and gays got it is because girls and gays have to pay attention to micro expressions, to other people's moods. I have a friend, I'm coming more from a feminist perspective than being a Byler, like this is not a Byler channel, right? I talk about politics and media, right? So one of my friends, Melanie Hamlet, always says that women have to have a thermometer up the butt of men to constantly gauge their moods and reactions and responses, and that's out of self-preservation, because men are the number one danger to women, right? Women get assaulted and ended by the men in their lives, and as an abuse survivor myself, that's a true thing. And a content warning, I'm going to talk a little bit about that, not deeply, but, my father was incredibly violent towards me. Most of the time he was like a sweet, funny guy. That's one thing I've always hated in media, where the abusive parent is always like an alcoholic and constantly a jerk, and constantly demeaning the abusers and constantly really abusive all the time. My dad was wonderful, but it was somewhat cyclical. It was, things that were happening in his life, probably, certainly all the abuse and trauma he suffered. He just, didn't get help and passed it on, because in his generation, you didn't go to a therapist, especially if you're a man, especially if you're black, etc. So, in some ways, like, I'm closer to my dad, or I was, he's passed away 26 years ago, but I was closer to my dad than a lot of people are, because my dad worked the graveyard shift so that they didn't have to pay for daycare. So, plus it was the shift differential, he got paid more to work graveyard. So my mom was the one that helped me get ready in the morning when I was a kid, and my dad was the one that was home when I got home from school and until I went to bed. So he's the person I had dinner with every night. He's the, he played catch with me in the yard. I spent a lot more time with my dad than a lot of kids. Dad's some guy that shows up at dinner time and you really only see him at breakfast and dinner. I spent more time with my dad than maybe my mom. Definitely for certain parts of my life, probably from 8 to 18, yeah. And my brother, too. My dad was the primary caregiver. My brother's like 18 years younger than me. My dad was the primary caregiver probably from the time my brother was 2 until my dad passed away when my brother was a few weeks before his 9th birthday. So, it's abuse is more complicated than is often depicted, and so I'm someone that was beaten, strangled, all sorts of things. I have friends who were sexually abused, and so abusers are not always it's not always a constant. That obviously varies, but I don't even remember where I was going with that, because my mind is still blown by a lot of the responses we're getting. But I just want you to take heart. Like I said before, and I said before that if the Duffers don't end with a Byler ending, they failed the narrative and logic of their own universe. And I have even a non-Byler reason for that. Excuse me. Remember I talked about in earlier videos about the all is lost ending. This is a major plot point in every single movie. It doesn't matter if it's Disney. It doesn't matter if it's animated. It doesn't matter if it's a rom-com or a drama or sci-fi or whatever. There's always the all is lost moment. Whether it's in a rom-com where one character offends or hurts the other, or they see the other with a different partner, whether it's Star Wars and you have the Emperor sort of mocking Luke and electrocuting Luke and telling him, oh, the shields are fully operational. That's the all is lost moment. Luke is going to either convert to the dark side or be killed. And I think the Emperor even tries to get Vader to kill him. And then what happens instead is Vader throws the Emperor down the shaft and blows up the Death Star, right? So, no. He blows up the Emperor. They blow up the Death Star otherwise. So that all is lost moment is just a mandatory plot point. If I didn't have an all is lost moment in one of my screenplays, I would fail. I wouldn't complete my courses, right? I wouldn't have an MFA if I didn't follow logical plot structure. You can have twists, you can subvert expectations, but you can't not have that all is lost moment, because that gives gravitas. That, there was nothing, that there was no point where I felt like the characters were at risk. In fact, even after there's usually also a false victory before the final victory. And as I was watching and they're driving away in the Upside Down, and they're all happy and like, yay, we did it, I thought, oh, something's going to happen, right? There's still like another creature, another final boss or something. That's when there should have been a surprise. That's when there should have been a twist and a final battle, right? But instead you have this easy battle where with, standard weapons, the kids defeat the Mind Flayer. Like, I would have even bought that if they were shooting directly into the heart that was like over Vecna's body. It just, nothing about this makes sense, and it feels like it was rewritten or we got Vecna'd, or you know what I mean. It doesn't feel right. One thing we say in writing is that it wasn't earned. Without having real stakes, even the killing of Vecna and all that's not earned. Beyond that, the whole thing with with Byler, the L thing is not earned because there was no chemistry between Mike and L the whole season. They hug each other the same as L hugs Will. But then suddenly Mike couldn't touch Will after Will came out, so now Mike's a homophobe, when in season 1 is established that he fought the homophobes. I mean, this whole season feels like the bullies from season 1 wrote it. Like, what? And here's the thing, to call Bylers delusional when they're the smartest, most observant, most educated in visual storytelling and the language of film is disgusting. And for the Bylers to say that's noise, and noise they had to ignore, then why did they queer code Mike so extensively that I, as a straight woman, on rewatching and paying attention, noticed all the queer coding? I didn't notice the first time because I was distracted, like a lot of people watch TV and it's almost background noise. But when I was actually paying attention and watching, why was Finn constantly staring at Noah's lips? And I have men in various comment sections saying, oh, so if I look at men's, my friend's lips, I'm gay? Yeah, I mean, yeah, or I'm in love? Yeah. Because you know where I look at my friends? They were just my platonic friends that I have no sexual attraction to. Their eyes. I'm like a normal person. The only time people don't look in someone's eyes is if they are shy and can't look in their eyes, but they're not looking at their lips. And they're definitely not like slapjawed staring at their lips. And it happens repeatedly. I think someone I saw said that there's at least like 20 instances over like seasons 3, 4, and 5 where Mike is staring at Will's lips. So, like, again, as I said previously, either Mike is gay or Finn is gay. Because what? That's just not, and that's not necessary. And that isn't necessary for Will to be gay. I know some people are even like mad that Will was gay at all. But here's the thing. The Byler coding was, and the colors and the music and all that wasn't necessary for Will to be gay. Will could have had a crush on Mike in season 3, except it's Mike looking longingly back at Will's house and crying in his mother's arms like he did when he thought Will was dead. So, and again at graduation, cries in his mother's arms. Interesting. Not cries, but it's very like a parallel to the previous times. So Mike is way more queer coded than Will, but the time, Will could have met someone in California and dated someone or had a crush on someone there. There was no need for his crush to be Mike, first of all. And even if his crush was Mike, when he's in California, that's the perfect opportunity for him to meet someone else and crush on them or date them and realize the sexuality, and then come out to Mike and say, I kind of used to have a crush on you, but, this helped me realize whatever. And that could have been closed by season 4. There was no reason to drag it out to the final season. But also there was, again, no need to queer code Mike, right? Like, Mike didn't need to have all the stuff he had in his room. He didn't need to be staring at Will's mouth constantly. So don't let people say you're delusional. Seems to be the I don't know where it came up, but it's like the only word, like only word of over 6 characters that these mouth breathers know. And again, Mike would hate these mouth breathers. It doesn't make sense. I think one of the things that's happened is, unfortunately, the show suffered from its own success, because why is a show about outcasts becoming so popular with people who belittle the outcasts, the gays, the minorities, the people that are making all these racist and homophobic comments, and AI and everything, and again, having the dumb people make fun of the smart people, they have somehow flipped on who their, core audience is, just because this bigger audience fell in love with the sci-fi aspects, completely ignored the values of friendship and accepting differences and outsiders being heroes, on and on. They forgot who the show was for. In contrary to the accusations that they are catering to wokeness and LGBT, they actually did fan service to, again, the bullies from season 1. Like, that's exactly who now is bullying, young queer kids. And I am so sorry to see that. I am so disgusted that they have opened up queer kids who are already more vulnerable because of what's happening culturally, particularly in the United States, to bullying and potential harm by the government. And now they have to be belittled in a fandom where they felt seen, and then be called noise by the creators. If you didn't want people to think Mike and Will were in love, then why did you make Mike so gay? And then we're being gaslit that he wasn't queer-coded and that we imagined it. I have people saying, well, you wanted him to be gay. Why would I, as a 54-year-old woman who was not interested in the teen relationships at all, as an initial casual viewer, want Mike to be gay? It's just that when I paid attention, he seemed really gay, gayer than Will. Far more queer-coded, as I've said many times. So I am completely disgusted at what the Duffers have done, how they strung along the Byler fandom, because the Byler fandom didn't need Mike and Will to happen. And they didn't make that up. They just paid attention to what the Duffers created. There was no reason for all the queer coding and costuming and music cues and lighting and the framing of the characters in very romantic ways, the repeated musical motifs that paralleled the other canon couples. None of that was necessary. You could have just made Will gay. The people that became Bylers would have been very happy that there was representation, and that character could have explored his sexuality with anyone, another boy in Hawkins. Could have had other crushes in Hawkins. He could have, again, the perfect time would have been when he was in California, because if he did have a crush on Mike, he'd have that time to kind of forget that and not be seeing Mike every day, and not, sometimes when you have a crush and you just like see them every day when you're young, and you're just crushing on them, you can't get them out of your mind. So the perfect time would be when he was 2,000 miles away. So none of it makes sense. And they failed. We did not fail. The Duffers failed. Either they wimped out or decided to appeal. Looks like I got cut off again. I'm not sure how much time I lost, but I was going to say that they decided to appeal to the later fandom that became more dominant in numbers. I'm super disgusted. But I just want to reiterate, you're not delusional. They completely betrayed you. They queerbaited you. They went out of their way to put, the Byler colors, not just in the show, but in their social media. Like in Twilight, people, shipped, there were the competing ships of, Jacob and Bella versus Edward and Bella. And even though Jacob never made any sense, it didn't really harm anyone to ship them, other than Jacob's character being Native American, which people don't always want to see a person of color and, in love with a white person and leave their community, right? Dating anyway. So I don't think that, it harmed anyone to have Bella not choose Jacob. But it didn't harm anyone. It didn't go right into someone's identity and then shit on it, which is basically what they did. So again, I'm so sorry that they did that. You didn't fail. They failed. You're not delusional. They either wimped out and decided to appeal to the lowest common denominator of fandom, or they just weren't capable of delivering, because this could have been a beautiful revolutionary love story where the love of two gay boys saves the world. And in addition to there not being a all is lost moment. Usually, as I said previously, that all is lost moment is usually addressed, especially when there's an obvious love interest, by that love interest being in peril and the hero saving them. And that doesn't happen with Elle or with Will, right? There's no, like we had a lot of people had theories that Mike would be vecna'd. That's something that should have happened. You see Mike looking tired, drinking coffee, spacing out when Nancy's talking to him, all the symptoms that you saw with Max. So it was heavily implied that Mike was vecna'd. So again, that's something that just didn't pay off and wasn't addressed. And, it does feel like there's maybe something to cut Gate. And then the Duffers claim nothing was cut. That's just a lie, because there's always things cut. That's why you have deleted scenes on DVDs and movie. I know people don't always buy DVDs anymore, but even in streaming, you can watch cut scenes, right? So for them to say there was nothing cut from season 5 is nonsense, especially when they said they had something like 600 hours worth of film. Obviously, they're probably counting various takes, and stuff, but there's always something cut. None of this really makes sense. And I also want to reassure you, again, as a writer, I am so entirely impressed with your fan theories, your sense of humor, and not only the fan theories themselves and how smart they are, but also the supporting evidence, because I'm coming from more of a print background. Screenwriting I did later, so there's things I don't pick up on as well, like costumes and lighting and the staging and blocking, and the acting I might miss because of watching distracted. I didn't notice all the lip staring until I rewatched. I'm just thoroughly impressed, and especially since a lot of the people whose comments I'm reading online are teenagers and people in their early 20s who grew up with the show. And so they haven't had decades of writing experience, haven't gone to the writing programs that I've been in and done those things, and they are already so accomplished in their writing. And so I really want you to focus on that positive. Keep building your community, whether that's Byler, whether that's LGBT community and allies, whether that is you, like Will, finding a place where you are more safe and comfortable in person and online, and develop those skills, because your stories are important, and this is a huge lesson in the importance of representation, especially at a time like this where it just feels like they sided with the bullies. It's almost like the bullies literally wrote this this finale. Your stories are important, and you need to tell them, because obviously straight white men can't always write, and maybe so far almost have never written queer stories correctly, stories of people of color correctly. They wrote it from a straight white male perspective. I'm surprised Lucas was, lived near Mike and didn't live in the, ghetto part of town, right? Because that's what they did to Will. He had to go off and live with the other fairies. He couldn't be happy in Hawkins. He couldn't, have a happy ending with Mike, and Mike doesn't have a happy ending, and he's crying while looking at Will's binder, not looking at a picture of 11. Never kept any pictures of 11, by the way. Couldn't say I love you to her, even as she's about to sacrifice herself. So, what the hell? So I really want you to, again, focus on community, focus on building a better world, because these straight white men failed us as straight white men have failed everyone else since colonialism began. So don't lose faith in the world or lose faith in yourself. Remember, Weimar era Germany was free. There were trans people, there were gay people, there was freedom, there was progressive ideas, and then the Nazis came. But we also defeated the Nazis, and we need to get strong and defeat the Nazis. We need to make the homophobes either wake up or shut up. They've been empowered and emboldened and encouraged, and we have to keep standing up to them. And again, I am so sorry that they're coming for you, because I'm an old woman who's been through this many times, been let down, been abused, gone through hell. It is something I am accustomed to. I am a veteran of these battles, and so I can handle it. I can handle the nonsense in my comments. I'm sorry that you're getting it when you're, some of you are so young and your identity and selfhood is still forming. So I can handle it. I'll take it for you. I will defend you. Take care of yourselves. Avoid these spaces. Block the nasty commenters. Do what you have to do to protect your peace. But don't lose faith in yourself. Don't lose faith in the world. Find your friends and your allies where you can, and build that community and write your own stories, because straight white men obviously aren't capable of doing so. I love you. Get the help and support you need to get through this, because I know it was more than a show for you. It gave you hope, and you need to find your hope again.